It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mainz and Dutch. I'm your host, Mainz. My colleague in the Danger Zone in Rainford, Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
I'm very, very well. Better than every other skill position player for the Giants, apparently.
Because they're not playing. Are they having a competition with the Cleveland Browns to see which team is the most injured ever?
It's almost as if you have a head coach who sends his players off to do laps whenever something goes wrong, these players may find reasons for their body to break down 7 weeks into a season.
Joe Judge, and I quote, it stinks, the fish stinks from the head down, right?
Yeah, thank you, Luca Brazzi.
I mean, we're not talking head coaches this week, but if that dude is still in a job by week 1 of next season, something's desperately wrong.
Getting blown out by the Los Angeles Rams and keeping your quarterback out there to the very end 7 days after he suffered a brain injury shows that you don't have a brain.
Correct. Low slagging off the New York Football Giants, one of my favourite activities, but we're not doing that today. Today, we got two plugged into the mains. We talked last week about MVPs. What we're gonna look at here is the muching middleness of the NFL.
Great phrase.
The middleness of the NFL, muchness. To try and understand if any of these teams have anything to live by in terms of the quarterback situation, and then we're going to look at what can be described as an absolutely wild AFC playoff picture. We'll then look at Neil's great pick of Dick Jones last week in Fancy Darlings. We'll look at Fancy Loser. We'll look at our predictions for the week, bound to go wrong, because they have every week, although I will give myself partial credit this week. But we'll get onto that when we get there. But without further ado, Neil, let us plug into the mains, talk about QBs. So last week we looked at MVPs, and then I was watching the NFL last week, and the early slate wasn't great, I didn't think. I watched Thursday Night Football, which was Bucks against the Eagles, and I saw that Sunday Night Football was, Steelers against Seahawks, the dead carcass of Ben Roethlisberger against the reincarnation of Geno Smith, and it made me think there's a lot of teams without quarterbacks here, or there's a lot of teams who went into the season thinking we've got a plan at quarterback. Is this plan going to work? And I think after 6 weeks, it's fair to have a look and see how it's getting on. What I've done is I've compiled a list of around 10 teams. I've not included first round draft picks from this year. And what we've looked to do is, do we believe this team has a quarterback or not? Because let's be brutally frank here. I think the last team to win the Super Bowl without a really good quarterback was probably your Philadelphia Eagles, although he was playing spectacularly well. And the time before that was probably Eli Manning, and he's going to the Hall of Fame.
Don't forget Joe Flacco either.
Yeah, but he was on absolute fire, and someone then gave him $100 million. So it's easy to plug it into this Joe Flacco, but Joe Flacco nearly said something I shouldn't. Beat the New England Patriots under Bill Belichick and Tom Brady multiple times in playoffs in Foxborough. So we can argue whether he was any good or not, and he probably wasn't in the grand scheme of things, but let's never forget those things.
Can I just say before we go into this, that of the list you have sent is a compelling list, and obviously we'll touch on all of them. There is one team you have left out, and it does surprise me.
That's your team,
considering
mate.
Who you're talking to. Yes,
that's your team. That's deliberate, and I'll tell you why. So if we start with your Philadelphia Eagles, like Jalen Hurts is, I don't know where he positions exactly in fantasy, but he's like in the top. He's a first round draft pick. He's 4. Neil's giving me the forefinger. He is absolutely terrible. Like on Thursday, he was abysmal, and somehow probably got 20 fantasy points, I assume, because he scored 2 touchdowns. My problem is for Hurts, I think he's abysmal. And that's he's doing exactly what he did at college, I believe. He was not accurate in college. He didn't throw it great, but he ran well for both Alabama and for Oklahoma. He's not helped by his head coach. I'm almost putting head coach in inverted commas here. Like, they never run it, ever. Like, it's just, I guess, a failure of organisational proportions or a decision not to do it. He has more talent than some Eagles quarterbacks have had in the past. Some very good Eagle quarterbacks who won multiple games. But I wouldn't exactly say it was stocked right now. It could be this young talent, but I think I didn't put him on because I just assumed we both got the same answer, that I don't think he is the answer.
As I say, the best quote I've heard about Jalen Hurts is, and this is about him generally, is Jalen Hurts is the man, but he's not the guy. Yeah,
and I think it's fair. So let's go to the additional list. We'll start with a team who attempted to fix their quarterback situation trade this year, and that's the Carolina Panthers. They went for Sam Darnold. That looked okay after 3 weeks. It looks like back to the drawing board after week 6.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't all on Gase.
Yeah, I think, and the problem is, we'll never know, right? Because Adam Gase may have broken him. And that just, you may never know if that was going to work. I do look at certain quarterbacks in certain places and you think if they went to somewhere else, it just would fail automatically. Zach Wilson may be good, may not be good. But it's an uphill task to be good for the New York Jets. Do you know how I know that? Because it's been an uphill task for everybody else.
I mean, you look about it, while I've been watching the NFL, the three quarterbacks they've had that had any long-term success were Vinny Testaverde, who'd been around the world 3,000 times and played for everyone.
Correct.
Chad Pennington, who basically was in there to not do any harm.
Yeah.
Dink and dunk his way up and down the field, and he did.
He did, yeah. He absolutely did. He brought a spoon to a gunfight, but he still got them up and down the field, absolutely.
And Mark Sanchez, who got there in the back of a dominant power running game and one of the best defenses over a course of 2 years the NFL had seen for many a year.
Yeah.
Of those three, at the height of their powers, if you had to say to them, go on, win us this thing, probably would have been Vinny. But back in those days, you could still, even if it was, okay, you've got 2 minutes, 4 seconds, 1 timeout. You're going to mix in the run because that was the identity of the teams. You wouldn't ask Chad to do it, and you'd ask Sanchez to do it, and you'd regret it. So they've had 3 middle-tier starting quarterbacks in 20 years, and if you look what they had before that, back to when Namath played, quarterback is not a glamour spot for the Jets and never has been.
No. A team that did used to have a glamour quarterback and attempted to get another glamour quarterback is the Miami Dolphins. Rumours circulating that they're attempting again to get another quarterback via trade. We won't be discussing that right now because we've made it our mission not to discuss that person until such time as legal proceedings are dealt with. However, what we can discuss is Tua Tagovailoa. I thought he was okay on Sunday. I think he's shown okayness throughout his career in the NFL. I thought he'd be a lot better, but I don't think Miami are convinced, and that's fine. And he's been injured multiple times, not a good thing. And Miami have decided that they're going to draft players that won't help him stay on his feet. So therefore, I assume they're looking to move on from Tua.
That's one way of looking at it. The other way is, if you look at them this season, their overall pass rate is 68%. So they're clearly wanting to put this offense in the quarterback's hands. Now, that might be the best way to see about Tua, because if you think, we'll tell you what, we'll just invest everything and just run the ball. Well, why does he spend a first-round pick on him? So at least this way, they're giving him the chance to fail. And he will fail doing what they want him to do rather than them trying to win in spite of him. So it's weird. It's almost as if they got buyer's remorse the second the pick was in.
Correct.
Especially when they saw what happened with Justin Herbert.
But I discussed this with Callum Squires on a touchdown review, right? Like, nobody in their right mind at that time was taking Herbert over Tua. They just weren't doing it. So we can all say, oh, what a terrible decision. But it's not the Mitch Trubisky at 2 decision that the Chicago Bears made. Let's not get it twisted. It looks terrible now. But no one thought Justin Herbert was going to be like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL in year 2. No one thought that. So you unlucky. That's one of those things.
I think the Dolphins' problem is that we've seen that some teams are trying to put the team in place and then drop the quarterback into it. Whereas the Dolphins looked like they had a plan when they were rebuilding, but then all of a sudden they convinced themselves that the rebuild was further along than it was and thought they were contenders and have made moves to that extent, trading down, trading back up to draft Jalen Waddle. What the hell are you doing? When has that type of player ever been worth trading up in for the first round for? It hasn't. Now, yeah, he had a very productive game at Spurs. You traded up for that, did you? This time of game, take the touchdowns away. That is not what you want a first-round wide receiver to do. They thought they were much further along. They thought they could get by with the offensive line, and they probably thought that Tua was athletic enough to overcome the restrictions of the line. I don't think Tua, you watch more of him than me, this is not the Tua that played for Alabama.
It's not. No,
I don't think he ever will be again.
No.
I think we don't know enough about hips to say how easy it is to come back even at a young age.
Yeah, and I think the final thing on the Dolphins is the fatal flaw you can have is being enamoured with your own talent evaluation. They have drafted badly. They've had lots of swings and have lots of misses. Their first round pick left tackle is now playing like left guard. That's not good news. Speaking of teams who drafted badly, let's move on to the New York Football Giants. Started okay this season for Daniel Jones, and there would have been some kind of, maybe. But luckily for the Giants, I believe, that's gone now, and he's gone. He's got to be gone, and they've got to start again.
I watched a QB school breakdown of his game against the Rams. And JT is obviously very fair to quarterbacks, having played it himself.
Of course.
So he will give credit where it is due. He will apportion blame when it is due. And he will also look at the factors around them that are out of their control. Daniel Jones did a lot of bad things against the Rams. They were not, Aaron Donald, they got Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. Yeah, these people were not present on every play. He makes bad decisions. He has sloppy mechanics. He has a left tackle that's a turnstile. It seems to be the way they go with the Giants. It's as they thought Eric Flowers was such a good experience. We'll do it again. They have. I don't know what they're feeding their players. I don't know what they're training on. Is it a car park? I honestly don't know. They're all injured. They're all, There was Cooper Kupp's second touchdown on Sunday. The effort by the Giants defenders was pathetic. That's a team that's quitting their coach. So you've quit the coach. So again, was Daniel Jones ever going to be any good? No, he was overdrafted. But they convinced themselves he was good enough. And there's a good chance that the crap he's had to put up with, even if he was a diamond in the rough, they've probably ruined him.
Slightly different tact on the next team, and that's the Cleveland Browns. I think Baker Mayfield has been good in stages, very good in certain parts. But you're reaching that we're going to have to pay him $40 million a year for over 8-9 years. That's a serious lot of money. I assume they're going to do it because they have won with Baker Mayfield as the quarterback. But I don't think they've won because Baker Mayfield's been the quarterback, and that leads to concerns and issues going forward.
I would be stunned if the Browns extended him before the end of his contract. Now, you can look at teams who've picked first round quarterbacks and let them play out the 5th year option. There have only been 2 that played out the 5th-year option and didn't get signed by that team. In fact, there's only been 2 who've played out the 5th-year option in the first round. So this is since 2011. All the other first-round quarterbacks have either been released outright or have re-upped. Mm-hmm. And the 2 that didn't was Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota. Their 2 teams knew going into that 5th year, I think we know where we are with these people. I do not believe the Cleveland Browns have won over the last 2 years because of Baker Mayfield. They have won while Baker Mayfield has been there. Now,
I don't think it's been in spite of, though, right? No, I think that's where we need to be clear. They haven't won because of him, but they also haven't won in spite of him, which makes it, I think, even more complicated.
Yeah, he's on the bus. He's just nowhere near the driver's seat. And he's not on the bus, shooting paper through straws and making it unpleasant for everyone else on the journey. He's just not the reason why it was a good trip. And it would be best for him if he only misses 1 game. If Case Keenum plays 2-3 games and executes the offense that he has shown he can when Kevin Stefanski is around, that could then open up the eyes and say, look, we've got no reason to pay Baker Mayfield. Let him play out next year. Let him wow us next year. You just worry, though, is the system he plays in, it's not there for the quarterback to stand up and say, I'm the reason. It's a part of the system. So do you need to spend $40 million on a player to be part of that system? Or should you actually be looking, we probably need to upgrade at wide receiver. Could do with another tight end, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Detroit Lions, I think we assume Jared Goff is not the answer. But given the salary cap implications, I assume they'll probably keep him for another year. Especially as it looks like, although I don't know, I haven't read, the top 300 from Ollie Hodgkinson that's coming out later this week to say whether there are quarterbacks, but rumours have it that no quarterback is necessarily jumping out in the draft to say draft me first overall, of which the Lions are in prime position.
I was listening to a podcast and someone, I forget who it was, I think it was Dane Brugler, who said he has heard, no, sorry, it was Eric Edholm, sorry, and he said he's already got a bet on this lad who's replaced Spencer Rattler winning the Heisman this year.
I know.
That's how unimpressive quarterback play has been.
And he's a redshirt freshman, so he wouldn't be allowed for at least another year, if not more. So yeah, no. I think the Lions are in a wait and see, draft a defensive end kind of situation.
Yeah, they are. You look, their offensive line was supposed to be a strength, but it's been decimated by injury. So it's almost like, well, let them bed in once they're healthy. Again, it's put the infrastructure in place. Let Goff have the crap kicked out of him, and then put your own quarterback in. And Dan Campbell is not happy. I mean, I've never, ever seen a head coach take a breath and reflect before answering the question about Goff that Dan Campbell did last week.
No, I know.
He wanted to make damn sure what he said was the truth and also was not offensive, because he must have been thinking an awful lot more F words than came out.
Which knowing Dan Campbell, based on what we know about him, is not surprising. Carson Wentz and the Indianapolis Colts better last week. Healthier. Last 2 weeks, yeah. The staring giving the Philadelphia Eagles a first round draft pick in the face. So they need to be sure in the next, I'd guess, week or two that they are okay with that, because if they're not okay in the next week or two, I would assume he becomes a mysterious IR sit for the rest of the year, and they only give you a 2.
This is going to be the most fascinating off-field experiment for many a year, because the NFL does not advocate tanking.
No.
Just think back when Lovie Smith basically benched everyone just to make sure Tampa Bay got the first pick. Look at the vitriol Doug Peterson got last year.
Correct.
If Carson Wentz does not suffer an injury, but all of a sudden we're going to bench him.
Recurrence of groin injury, recurrence of foot injury, right?
Because this is it. I mean, if they bench him, but he's the backup, what happens if someone gets injured and he has to play?
Oh no, he'll be IR'd. They'll have to IR him. They'll have to,
and then you'd think the Eagles would then be saying, okay, we want to see where he got hurt. We want to see practice film, and it's allowed. You're allowed to raise complaints about practice. It's part of the procedure. It's part of the collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah.
It's going to be fascinating to see this process play out. Obviously, if the Colts keep losing games, it becomes even more interesting. But if they keep winning or stay competitive, and the Titans don't establish themselves as a power, and they stay a bit of a yo-yo team as well, it's as you say, once we start getting into week 13, assuming everyone's still afloat, then the injury reports for Wentz are going to make fascinating reading. He has been better.
Yeah.
But they played last week and he attempted 20 passes. What do you learn from that? Not long.
Well, and the other thing on that is, if you're doing that to win games, do you want to give a first round draft pick for a quarterback that's only going to throw it 20 times? If you think that's successful to win, it falls back into the Baker Mayfield thing. I'm going to group 3 teams together: the New Orleans Saints, the Washington Football Team, and the Denver Broncos. All have put what I would describe as stopgaps in some way, shape or form. Washington actually had a stopgap that got injured and then put another stopgap in. All three have not got the quarterback that they need, and I assume will go searching for one as soon as possible.
The Broncos are in the best position because of how strong their roster is, other than the quarterback position. Obviously, the defense has been injury affected. They've lost pieces on offense as well, but when all are healthy, this is a strong roster. Yeah. It just needs a quarterback to come in and elevate everyone. Teddy Bridgewater, bless him, is a lovely fella, I'm sure. Certainly one of the type of people you like to root for, but he's not going to put you over the top. And Drew Lock certainly isn't. I think we can call that experiment done. Washington, well, as I say, the best quarterback Washington have had in the last 20 years was Kirk Cousins. And it's as simple as that. There's no one else. There is no one else who compares.
And in theory, when we were doing pods then, I think we were both in agreement that we were probably okay with them getting rid of Kirk Cousins.
But
I think he's been playing really, really well for Minnesota, by the way. It's like, you know, I've got it that, you know, but did Washington want to pay him? It, for me, the Kirk Cousins Washington thing is very similar to, say, Baker, say Wentz. You know, he was good. He wasn't great. Do you want to pay him $30 million a year? And Washington decided they didn't want to do that.
We spoke with, going back years, we spoke to Greg Cosell, we spoke to Andrew Brandt, and we asked them in various guises, is Kirk Cousins, would you keep Kirk Cousins? Is he a franchise quarterback? And Greg Cosell said, well, in relation to what? Yeah. Which is, a great answer. Yeah. And Andrew Brandt said, okay, you get rid of him. And Andrew Brandt always asks, after any major personal decision, and now what?
Yeah, now what, of course.
And Washington have spent 4 years still trying to answer that question.
Yeah, they never had an answer.
No.
Final team, Neil. Put them in just because you get to promote your genius. That's the Las Vegas Raiders and Derek Carr. And I only put them in because of age and circumstance. And there's an assumption that, well, there isn't an assumption, there's a fact that they will have a new head coach in charge. And will they look to start again from scratch and try and trade Derek Carr? Because I think he's only got 1 year left on his deal after this one.
I think he has. Derek Carr is fine.
Exactly right.
Derek Carr is, he was thought of at the time as going in to be one of the elite, which is why he got his deal when he did. He's been fine. This year he's been very, very good. Last year he was good. This year he's been very, very good in what have been trying circumstances for him and the team. But again, we have a question. Okay, we move on from Carr, and now what? It's not a strong class. The chances are they're probably going to win too many games to even get into contention for the top one. Well, free agents, well, why bother? We can just, probably, given the stage of his career he is, we can probably lock down Carr again. And what free agent is going to be? What you're going to get into? You're going to get into the Teddy Bridgewater, Jameis Winston stakes. I'd rather have Carr.
Yeah, I mean, he's his final year next year, 19 million and no dead cap. So there will be a decision that needs to be made, and we will look at all those quarterbacks going forward. I think using the Raiders as a good jumping off point. Let's move to the second part of Plugged Into the Mainz and talk about the playoff picture. The AFC is a nightmare, Neil. I think if we would have done this podcast Monday, you would have been gone, oh, Buffalo Bills, probably the class, quote unquote, of the AFC, and then they got beat by the Tennessee Titans, and you can get beat by the Tennessee Titans, that's fine, I've got no problem with the fourth down, it just didn't work, blah, 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 blah. But they didn't win, and it put them 4-2, and they went from first to fourth in the playoff picture. Right now, Kansas City are out, Cleveland are out. I'm just putting the Patriots in because the one of the teams they're out, and so are the Colts. Ravens, Chargers, Titans, Bills, Bengals, Raiders, and Steelers are the 7 teams in. Yeah, welcome to hell. I guess the question is, who do you believe the best of those teams?
I still believe in the Bills because their offense is great. They score points. Their defense is great. They had a bad day.
Do you know? I look at that game and it's styles make fights, right? And I think there's only one team in that whole division, in the whole conference, that Buffalo do not really want to play, and that's the Tennessee Titans, because they have been beaten by them a few times now. I don't know why that is. Sometimes you just don't like the matchup or whatever. And when you're coming up against the Hall of Fame running back, that's right, I said it. Who is going to, on pace right now, I think, Neil, you tweeted before, for 2,200 yards and 28 touchdowns, but won't be anywhere near the MVP. Work that out.
He's a running back.
What I know. I watched it, but like, what I'm suggesting is, I don't like the phrase valuable, but if you take Derrick Henry out of that team, they don't score 34 points against the Buffalo Bills. Don't want to rain on everyone's parade.
If you don't think Darrington Evans could come in and replicate what Derrick Henry is doing, I can't help you.
There's a zero RB concept, and then there's a Derrick Henry equivalent. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, we all agree that running backs are interchangeable unless it's Derrick Henry, and he's not interchangeable.
Are there, in your opinion, how many teams in the NFL at the moment are better than the Baltimore Ravens? Because it's not very many.
Maybe 2. I think right now, if someone was to ask me who the best team in the AFC was, I think it would be the Ravens. I think Lamar Jackson's playing excellently well, although against the Chargers it was a little under the radar that he actually didn't throw very well. After throwing spectacularly well in previous weeks, he didn't throw very well. But then again, the way the defense played and the rest of the team, he didn't actually need to. So that's a good thing, right? Like, take your bad game and beat what could be the second best team in the AFC. And when I say beat them, I mean like bend them over your knee and take your slipper off and whack them. Like, they absolutely done them over. If we go NFL,
would you take the Ravens over the Cardinals?
Yes, I would. But this is. I think this is a bias by anybody who watches the NFL, right? Because basically what we're suggesting is, because their name is the Arizona Cardinals, we don't believe they can be any good. And they got Cliff as their head coach, so we just look and go, nah, I'm not sure. Like, even when the Cardinals were good under Arians and with Carson Palmer, I always think that someone said something would drop, a shoe would fall. Like, if someone asked me which teams are better than the Baltimore Ravens, I'd be like, just put them in the Super Bowl against the Bucs and let's see what happens. Like, against all the other teams, I think they probably win. Probably.
So again, if we're talking biases, would you take the Cowboys over the Cardinals? I want to say biases just because we hate them.
I was talking about this on the touchdown review, and right now, I think they've got a really good chance of being the number 1 seed in the NFC, given the fact that they are now 5-1. I think is right. They haven't played Washington yet. They haven't played the Giants yet, and they've still got to play the Eagles once more. So let's say they lose one of those games.
Which would be week 18 against the Eagles because they'll be resting their starters.
Correct. That's 9-2, right? Can they go 4 you know what I mean? Like I'm like, yeah, this could be a 13-win team, whether anyone likes it or not. You know, Mike McCarthy can be really shit, and like, it looked close. The Cowboys Patriots game. If you look at the box score, if you watch the game, it wasn't close. It was really poor coaching and a few bad decisions and plays in the red zone that stopped that being an absolute blowout. You know, I'm not a yards person, but that was the most yards that a Bill Belichick defense has ever given up. And I want to just be clear on that. Ever. I don't mean like as head coach of the New England Patriots. I mean ever. I mean when he was head coach of the Cleveland Browns, when he was defensive coordinator for Bill Parcells and the Giants, he's never given up that many yards. And, oh, by the way, that offense was missing Michael Gallup, who is a 1,000-yard receiver. So, as someone who hates the Cowboys, as do you, right now, I think we're in the... We need Mike McCarthy to fuck this up.
Oh, my pants are soaking wet.
We need Mike McCarthy to do stupid things because we might have to accept that they are the Packers under McCarthy, where they just win 12 games and then somehow lose in the NFC title game.
Yeah, if he continues to leave Kellen Moore to run the offense, Dan Quinn to run the defense, if he lets them happen, if he just lets them do the job they were brought in for, they're winning the Super Bowl, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop them. But if he decides, I'm Mike McCarthy and this is my show, we're fine.
Exactly.
They will fail in glorious fashion, and the PR fume from Cowboys Nation will sustain me till next September.
There'll be you and Stephen A. Smith strolling down the aisle. Back to the AFC. Back to the AFC. Chiefs and Browns both out of the playoffs. Browns now with 0 players playing the Broncos tonight. I was speaking to Joe Valenzuela. That's a must-win game for the Browns, right? Absolutely must-win. They can't go 3-4 with being behind Steelers, Bengals, and Ravens in their division.
No, they can't. It's, as I say, we don't like to say must-wins and cup finals in October, but they have to win. I expect they will win. By the time people listen to this, you'll know if our faith is misplaced or not, because the Broncos are a mirage. So the AFC North, is strangely compelling because we expected, I think you expected, 2 of these teams to be also rounds, where I expected, one of them to be swinging punches but not able to connect. Well, I thought the others would be the other two competitive ones and one team trying to find themselves. The Bengals look good. The Steelers are eking it out, and the Ravens are one of the best teams of football. It's the Browns who are the ones who are letting everyone down. Yeah,
is it? You speak of the Browns against the Broncos as a must-win. Is it as big for the Kansas City Chiefs against the Tennessee Titans this week? Do you play what I would describe as the Bill Belichick versus Thurman Thomas approach to this game and just accept that Derrick Henry is going to go for 159 yards and 2 touchdowns and you need to score 40?
You have to, because I don't think they can stop him. So they have to make the game plan. Fine. They're going to go in long drives unless he breaks off long touchdown runs. Fine. Here's what you need to do, Chiefs. Stop pissing around in the red zone. The turnovers they have in the red zone, it's like you're doing this on purpose. You meant to throw that because it's like, Patrick, piss off, mate. This is comedy stuff. This is not the preseason. Yeah. This is not a net. This is not, I'm going to try to reverse switch, hit it. No, execute. If they sort themselves out, because you can't stop the Chiefs. You can't stop Derrick Henry. So which do you have more faith in? I think at the end of the game, I'd rather have more faith that Patrick Mahomes is going to score more times on more drives than Ryan Tannehill does. But if they try and think, no, we'll bottle up Derrick Henry, well, you're going to have a lot of people making business decisions. And they look like they've been making those decisions all year long. So just let him run.
Well, according to the internet, you just lower your shoulder and hit him, right?
It's easy.
On that note, let's leave the plug into the Mainz and let's get into the fantasy portion of the show and start with Neil's fancy darlings.
Hello, darling.
Last week, 2-1. Neil picked against the Kansas City Chiefs twice. Taylor Heineke was only quarterback 24, 182 yards and a touchdown. That's a loss. That experiment's over. He might play more, but that experiment's over. Dick Seal-Jones in 4 catches, 51 yards and a touchdown. He was tight end 7. That's a massive victory for all those involved. Zach Moss, who had been great and had been helping my dynasty fantasy team, a massive stinker, 5.9 points and a loss for Neil. We're now 8-10 on the season. So Neil, where are we this week? Who is your first fancy darling?
First fancy darling, and I don't feel good about it, because why would you? It's Tua. Because the Falcons haven't got right all season, but they've let other people get right against them. They are allowing an average of 23 completions on 34 pass attempts for 257 yards and 2.2 touchdowns per game. That's 22 fantasy points per game for quarterbacks. The Dolphins are ridiculously pass happy. In neutral game scripts, that's when the game's within 1 score, they're passing the ball on 66% of their plays, and when it's overall, it's 68%. So Tua's getting the volume. I think he'd only previously had 1 game in his career over 30 passing attempts. He had that last week, and as I say, looked good. What was good, the fact that he was linking up with Mike Gesicki, which was something I was worried he wasn't going to do, because they've not had any chemistry at all. And 69.3% of the yards against the Falcons this year have come through the air. So that's how you attack them. The Dolphins can't run. So if you actually look at the Falcons' run defense, it's like, oh, this looks quite good. Yeah, because you don't have to. Just pass on them. They suck.
Player 2, Neil.
Player 2, I'm going back to the well with Ricky Seals-Jones. The Packers are allowing an average of 5 receptions for 50 yards to tight ends over their last 7 weeks, so over the course of this season, and an average of 13.65 PPR points per game. That's decent. That's high-end tight end numbers. Plus, we're in bye week hell, with the number of people who are out. So if you got Ricky Seals-Jones, I'd keep plugging him in. Terry McLaurin's banged up, and to be honest, there's only Seals-Jones who's been running any routes after Terry McLaurin. So Tyler Heineke, his days as being a little fancy darling are probably over, but that doesn't mean RSJ can't get home.
And final fancy darling, Neil.
Final fancy darling is Darnell Mooney. We talk about teams not needing or bothering to run against the Falcons. No one is bothering to run against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 84% of the yards against the Buccaneers this year have come through the air because you can't run them. Why would you want to run at Vita Vea? Do you have a death wish? Why would you want this? The Buccaneers, I say, are allowing an average of 15 receptions for 182 yards and 1.2 touchdowns per game and 26.2 PPR points to wide receivers. Al Robinson, it's over. Don't know whether he's checked out. I don't know whether it's just not happening for him. He looks lost. Darnell Mooney, he's not getting the high volume, but he does have the deep shot in him. So he might be able to get home. He might get a bit more work because hopefully Justin Fields is going to have to pass the ball a lot more. Do you know in his starts, bear in mind there's only 32 starting quarterbacks. He had a week where he started an NFL game and was the quarterback 34 in fantasy scoring.
Checks fingers to understand how that's possible.
Yeah. I think Taysom Hill did something and someone else might have, but yeah, he's not been good. He's not being helped. We talk about Jalen Hurts not being helped. Well,
same.
Welcome to the Matt Nagy experience. So they're not letting him run, but hopefully he'll take some deep shots, and that will help Darnell Mooney more than it'll help Allen Robinson.
Do you know, like in the past where you used to have like jousting where you'd get on a horse and you'd like have the thing, let's not have a horse, let's just have Derrick Henry and Vita Vea 10 yards away from each other and just running at each other and see what happens. I'm like assuming a nuclear disaster.
The scene at the end of Rocky 3 when Apollo and Rocky punch each other and it all goes colourful and it fades off. Yeah, That would be the ultimate definition of an irresistible force meeting an immovable object.
Fantastic, Neil. Fantastic use of a gorilla monsoonism. Let's move on and talk about Neil's fantasy loser. Last week, which Neil constantly forgets when we do fantasy loser, Neil picked Tyler Lockett because you know what? He has Geno Smith as his quarterback. You will not believe this. Neil won because Tyler Lockett had 5.5 points, 2 catches for 35 yards. Neil now 3-3 in fantasy loser. Neil, who is your fantasy loser this week?
Fantasy loser this week, you may be tempted to go to him because he's helped you in the past, and especially as we're in bye week hell and some ridiculously productive quarterbacks are sitting out this week. However, do not trust in Danny Dimes. We've spoken about him already. He sucks. He stinks. His offensive skill positions are departing rapidly at a rate unbeknownst to mankind. How quickly they're sitting out. The Panthers have not been good the last few weeks, but that's not because of their defense. The defense has been put into bad positions by their offense, so I don't expect them to give Danny Dimes any favours at all. But to be fair, he won't do himself any favours.
Yeah, because he flat out stinks. And finally, let us get on to mine and Neil's fantasy prediction of the week. Bound to go wrong. Neil, last week I suggested that Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce would combine for 50 points. They combined for 44 points, so it's a fail with partial credit, but a loss is still a loss. No second victory, place. Yeah, no second places in this sport. You told me that Keenan Allen would be a top 5 wide receiver. He was not. He had 5 catches for 50 yards. He was not good. I'm just going to do this simple, Neil, for my prediction this week. 200 yards, 2 scores. Derrick Henry. Yes, please.
See, the problem is, it's just a prediction, but is that even bold anymore?
Well, he's only, to be fair to me, I've added an additional 50 yards onto his average since week 1. So screw you. Maybe I'll go, okay, 200 yards and 3 scores. That's an additional 50 yards and an additional TD.
Well, we'll keep in with the running back theme. That's not bold. I say you don't impress me. In the words of Shania Twain, that does not impress me much. I'm going to go ridiculously bold, and I'm going to say 18 touches for Miles Sanders.
If he has 18 touches, does that mean he increases his touches by 300%?
Very likely.
I am concerned by this fantasy prediction. And I'm going to explain to the listeners why. Because in our League of Record, it's, I believe, seed 1 against seed 2 in our league. Neil being the dominant division leader in ours, and me running behind second, but probably a long way behind second. I'm comfortable with that, right? Of course, I'm playing Neil in bye-week hell time, where I haven't got any players, with the exception of Derrick Henry. And I noticed when I was looking through our matchup today that Neil has got Miles Sanders in running back 2 at the moment. So I assume this is not only a prediction but a hope.
It's more a hope than a prediction, let's be honest.
Neil is favourite according to NFL.com by 25 points. So I expect him to win comfortably. And, that's the way it goes. Because in the NFL, predictions are never wrong.
No, absolutely not. Nail them on.
Neil, that is the end of the show. Before we come back next week, where can people catch you?
Catch me on Twitter at Ndutton13. My weekly stuff, available at Number Fire at Rotoviz. There's no scouting matchup, obviously, this week because the Chargers are on a bye. But I will be back with that next week. And if you have any fancy questions, or any questions at all about, chocolates, flavoured crisps, anything at all, hit me up on the Twitter.
That'll be the answer to Neil's questions on chocolate and flavoured crisps is Spira and steak. So just move them along and ask about fantasy. I am at Mainz7 combined. We are at Waxing Lyrical. Mentioned a couple of times today. Spoke to some great people on the touchdown review for touchdown.co.uk. Favourite listen this week was talking to George Somerville of the College Chaps, which is a fantastic show. They got Ivan Mizell on this week. Just the guests, Neil, are putting us to shame. We need to pick up our game. He talked to me about Ed Orgeron and the LSU job. And we also did every time we talk, we speak about how much we've got a strange fascination with Lane Kiffin, and we continued that as they beat Tennessee this week. Also talked to Callum, talked to Taib, talked to Joe, and talked to Thomas. Really good. Give it a listen. Obviously, after you've listened to this, because these are the top guys, and at the moment, these top guys are out.